Alrighty, hello everyone. Excited to have you all here as we begin onboarding for the new DEAI committee, especially the expanded DEAI committee. Excited to for what we'll be getting into for the upcoming year. So I'll just begin by allowing everyone to introduce themselves with their name and society and the institution that they're at. And so feel free to just unmic and introduce yourself. I should probably start by saying that I'm France LV Banda. I'm the DEAI program manager here at FASEB.
LV, why don't you call on people? I think it's a little easier.
All right, so I'll just go according to who I'm seeing first. So we'll start with Marianne.
Hi, everyone. Marianne Bjornstein. I'm a new president of FASEB. I'm at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and I work on cancer research.
And next up is Beth.
Hi, all. I'm Beth Garvey. I'm a professor at the University of Kentucky, and I'm president-elect of FASEB.
And then next up, I see on my screen, the name says Brahma.
Yeah, hi. I'm Brahma Mulugu, and I am the chair of DEI in SFRBM, and I'm an immunologist at Duke.
And then next up, I see Theo Smith.
Hi, Theo Smith. I'm from the American Association for Anatomy, and I'm at Churro University, California.
Next up, Susie Bolson.
Hi, Susie Bolson. I'm at University of California, Irvine. I'm on chair of the membership committee on Society for Leukocyte Biology.
Lauren Walker.
Hi, everyone. I'm the VP-elect of the DEAI committee. I'm a toxicologist at Colgate-Palmolive, and I'm representing the American Association of Immunologists.
And then Holly Brownberg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Holly Brownborg. I'm a professor at the University of North Dakota School of Medicine, and I'm a representative of the American Aging Association.
And Yvette Seeger.
Hi, I'm Yvette Seeger, she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Scientific Strategic Program Advancement here at FASEB.
And next up, Alana O'Reilly or Elena.
Alana. Hi, I'm Alana O'Reilly. I'm at Fox Chase Cancer Center. I'm an associate professor there, and I also run a now nationwide nonprofit to train 5th through 12th graders in biomedical research. So I'm representing the GSA.
Awesome. And Jennifer Zeitzer.
I'm Jennifer Zeitzer, the director of the Office of Public Affairs at FASEB.
Maribeth Brute.
Hi, everyone. Maribeth Brute with Governance and Strategic Program Coordinator, FASEB.
And then we also have, so that I'm not sure in which order the name is. I think the last name may be first. Sai Suda Koka.
I'm associate professor at School of Pharmacy, Texas A&M. I'm a new member for this DEAI, and I am usually associated with the cardiovascular pharmacology aspect.
And Elisabetta Liverani.
Hi, my name is Elisabetta Liverani, and I am an assistant professor at North Dakota State University in Fargo, North Dakota, and I work with platelets and sepsis, and I am here as a representative of the diversity committee meeting for the Shock Society.
And Tanya Mesa.
Hello, how are you doing? I'm sorry. I actually had the day off, so I'm in the house with my family, so that's why I'm not showing my face because I was outside. And my name is Tanya. I work in Moffitt Cancer Center in genomics, and I represent ABRF, the Association by Biomolecular Research Facilities.
Great to have you all here. I think we've gone through the entire list, but if there's anyone that I may have missed on my screen, feel free to introduce yourself. Going once, going twice. I think we have everyone, so we can move on to the next slide, please. All right, so today's session will begin with Sally providing background on how FASEB functions as a nonprofit for some of you who may not be familiar with all the intricacies as you're stepping into this new role. And then following that, Yvette and I will then provide a brief overview of the DEAI Committee's charge and objectives, and then a preview of some of the work that we're going to tackle in the upcoming year together. And then we'll review how the DEAI Committee operates within FASEB's governance framework, and so what your relationship will be with FASEB's board. And then finally, we'll discuss some member best practices and what resources are available to you as a committee member. And so if you have any questions at all during the time that we're speaking, please raise the Zoom hand function and we'll be able to call on you and address those.
Okay, so thanks, LV. So I did introduce myself, but I've been in email contact, I think, with most of you. I'm Sally Schwitman. I'm FASEB's Director of Governance and Leadership Development. So I kind of help out with everything logistically to make our committees, task forces, and board of directors work smoothly. So in that role, I'm going to go over some of the basics about FASEB today, just so we can all start from the same page of understanding what FASEB is and what it does basically. So FASEB is made up of 26 member societies, and it represents about 110,000 researchers. These societies include, but are in no way limited to, immunology, anatomy, molecular biology, development biology, genetics, and pharmacology. And I think from going through our introductions, we heard a lot of those represented on this committee, which is really wonderful. And I'm sure as all of you are aware of your own society size, some of our societies are 150 to a couple hundred people strong. And then we have a few societies that are over 10,000 members. So it really runs the gamut. FASEB does have two membership types. So we have full memberships and associate memberships. Our full membership enables scientific societies to be actively involved in steering the Federation and creating new policies and content. So it's a very active role. And you are on this committee because that is one of the member benefits for our full member societies, is that you get representation in groups like the DEAI committee and get to actively participate in shaping these policies and statements and initiatives. The associate membership is a lot more passive, and it's basically where our member societies, our associate members, they get information from FASEB. We make sure they have resources available, but they're not actively participating in the decision-making process. This is FASEB's current strategic plan. It was adopted in 2018. So we are working towards, at this point, trying to figure out like what our next strategic plan is going to look like. But for right now, this is governing what we're working on. In 2018, you can see we did have this talent pool piece right here. And that really was the board of directors identifying that diversity needed to be emphasized. And then in 2020, like many other organizations, this work became much more urgent. And our board made a strategic investment of $1.5 million to design and implement programming in DEAI. I'm not going to get into too much detail because Yvette is going to talk about this a little bit later. But in December, the FASEB board approved bylaw amendments that added the new vice president and vice president-elect positions, so Marcelo Bonini and Lauren Walker. So they are officers. They sit on our executive committee. They're voting members of our board. And the board also revised the DEAI committee charter to allow each society to be able to appoint a member to it. So, and that is why you are all here. So FASEB, we do have a headquarters, but we are remote first. And but we use our headquarters space largely for times that we need to collaborate. You may also come to the headquarters. We use it for our board and any other in-person committee meetings. And we've really configured the space to where I think almost everything in the office has wheels on it, so we can configure tables and chairs to be wherever they want in the office. And like right now, I think, well, I'm in New Mexico right now. Elvie's in DC, Yvette's in Maryland. We're all over the place.
And I have wheels on, so.
Yeah, and Yvette always has wheels. So FASEB, this slide right here talks about how FASEB actually makes money. So we generate revenue primarily through our publications and our science research conferences, but we also do generate revenue through membership dues and our society management services, which it's basically with, I think, 11 other societies actually use FASEB for their HR services and benefits and stuff. And then we do some accounting work through our contractor for other member societies. So FASEB is a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean we're not profit or that we can't make a profit. It just means that whatever excess revenue we do make, it has to go back into FASEB. It doesn't benefit any individual like you would in a for-profit. And one of the things that excess revenue goes to support is these DEAI programs and initiatives. So this slide illustrates the impact that our revenue has on FASEB's overall budget. So you can see, like in 2020, we took a hit just like everybody else. We had a bump in our science research conferences in 2022 because honestly, a lot of our SRCs decided not to hold them in 2020 and 2021, and so we had a little over 50 science research conferences last year. This year we're a little bit back to normal, but as you can see, we are not generating a ton of excess revenue. So programs like DEAI, we have to be a little more creative in how we're going to fund them. And especially because publications and SRCs have such an outside impact on the rest of FASEB's budget, if anything happens to them, it really does impact every other program at FASEB. And Yvette is going to talk in more detail in just a few minutes on the other ways that we're seeking to fund DEAI. Okay, so before I turn things over to Elvie and Yvette, are there any questions? It was a lot of information. We tried to condense it, but I know there may be a lot of information there. So if you have any questions, now's the time. Okay. I'll turn things over to Yvette.
All right, great. Thank you, Sally. So you've gotten a high level view of FASEB, and I'm going to start. I know the slide says DEAI Committee Charge and Objectives, but before I turn it over to Elvie to pick up the specifics of the charge and the charter, I wanted to give everyone a little bit of history because chances are you've been involved with your societies for a bit. And what I have found over the years is that I tell people that I work at FASEB, and their points of entry are different. They might have gone to a scientific research conference. They might have published in the FASEB journal, or many people that I encounter, particularly early career professionals, they were able to go to their society's conference as a result of the MARC program, or the Maximizing Access to Research Careers. And so prior to 2018, most of FASEB's DEAI efforts focused on the Maximizing Access to Research Careers, or MARC program, and we received over 30 years of financial support from the National Institute of General Medical Sciences at NIH to support this program. And as I alluded to, that provided a ton of travel grants for individual researchers to attend society events. However, 2018 was a time during which NIGMS made a couple of policy changes that resulted in the reorganization of the MARC programs, ultimately eliminating FASEB's eligibility for these programs. So we took the opportunity to use another vehicle, another committee that is very important in FASEB's governance, the Science Policy Committee, and had the focus of the 2018 Science Policy Symposium look at new approaches FASEB could take to foster diversity and inclusion in the biological and biomedical sciences. The symposium informed the establishment of a diversity and inclusion task force that assessed existing FASEB and member society initiatives, including overlap and gaps that inform the development of the FASEB DEAI strategic plan and a series of recommendations to the board, including the establishment of a DEAI committee, the first iteration of the DEAI committee. Previously, DEAI policy issues were handled in an ad hoc manner by the Science Policy Committee via our Training and Career Opportunities Subcommittee. These topics will now be handled by this newly expanded DEAI committee, which I'm very excited about, and there will be consultation with the Science Policy Committee or SPC as necessary. I'll turn it over to Elvie to give a little more detail about the charge.
Yeah. So as you glean from what Yvette has said in terms of the brief history on the evolution of what has come to be the DEI committee, it's really essentially the place and sort of the exemplification of FASEB's own evolution when it comes to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. So all of the work that has been done has really culminated into having a home for some of these issues so that we can address them very directly. And that also connects to the strategic plans that we have as well to advance DEAI. So that's the critical charge for this committee. And so in its continuous evolution, the DEI committee is really responsible for ensuring that FASEB is meeting the needs of its membership and then also maintaining a critical awareness of emerging solutions to persisting inequities within science. Because as a federation, we do want to be in a position where we are addressing these issues as they approach and also setting a standard for the rest of the scientific community. And so that's one of the things that's very important in having an expanded committee as well, given the experiences that you all come to, whether it's personal experience within your institutions or even within your member societies, you're all approaching and have had experience with DEAI in different ways. So it adds layers to the work that we're able to do. So as you can tell simply from the objectives, you're providing input on the development and implementation of FASEB's DEAI initiatives, and that also comes along with being an ambassador for these things. So in the spaces that you inhabit, areas in which you have influence, you're an ambassador and really promoting these programs and ensuring that they're reaching the populations that need them. And then also overseeing the implementation of FASEB's strategic plan, including providing annual updates to the board on progress towards these goals and new opportunities and challenges. And we will touch on this a little bit later when we talk about the different parties in play and how the relationships works with them. But there also are subcommittees that you will be working with, and they'll be bringing things to you for ratification, for guidance, for improvement. And so that's really also an additional responsibility for this body. And something that's always fun, identifying opportunities for FASEB to collaborate with FASEB's own member societies and then also external entities. And one of the things that's really important in that is that all of our different member societies may be at different places when it comes to addressing DEAI or even coming up with different initiatives to promote DEAI. So it's really important to have all seats, to have all people at the table to ensure that we're hitting every level that we can and addressing all needs. And then finally, serving as ambassadors, as I've already said, for FASEB DEAI initiatives. So really this is guidance also in enhancing our existing programs. So we'll touch on this a little bit later on, but some of you may be familiar because I know there are some people who are on the subcommittees for some of these programs. So our CARES program and also our LEAD program, you will also be involved in just ensuring that we're staying up to date and meeting the needs and improving and enhancing these programs as they grow.
All right, so what you see here is the FASEB org chart. There will be a test, just kidding. So while FASEB's DEAI efforts cut across all the departments, the day-to-day oversight of progress towards DEAI strategic plan resides within the Office of Public Affairs. So you can see that that's where the red arrow is. This placement is the result of the board voting to approve 2 significant strategic investments, one in data sharing and reuse, also known as DataWorks. You can ask me about that on another call, and another to support new programming in DEAI as a result of the Science Policy Initiative. So, and I introduced myself, I said I was the Director of Strategic Scientific Program Advancement. I also have a second title as the Director of Science Policy. So since the recent efforts of DEAI have come out of science policy, this shows our link back to the Office of Public Affairs. And with our seat in public affairs, we interact with all the other departments that you see in the middle bar in FASEB organization. So, you know, you can see where we live, and actually having DEAI live within the Office of Public Affairs, that it has us well situated to engage with the policy arm as well as legislative, and then we can inform all the other activities across the organization. So here you can see the day-to-day team leading FASEB's DEAI efforts. We are small but mighty. And so LV Banda is our DEAI program manager and will serve as the staff liaison for this committee. She also works with the programmatic subcommittees to develop recommendations to bring back to this group for approval. Marivet Brut provides critical coordination support for the DEAI programs, especially during open application periods for both the CARES and LEAD programs, which LV just mentioned, and we'll talk about in a little more detail. And then my role is to provide strategic support and oversight to the DEAI portfolio. You'll also see me guiding the committee's policy-oriented deliberations because of my cross-cutting role with science policy.
I was completely muted. I was ready to go. So some of the member responsibilities that you see here, and some of which we touched on previously, but more specifically, serving as a voting representative and a liaison for your own member society. And as previously mentioned, in order for us to truly address issues that are affecting the scientific community on a federation-wide level, we thought it'd be very critical to expand the DEAI committee as a body, just to ensure that all of the needs are being addressed. As I mentioned before, different societies may be at different places, but the support should still be the same across the board. And also participating in monthly DEAI committee meetings. And so what's required is having a participation of at least 75% in terms of attending the meetings. That's very critical just to make sure that we're all staying up to date on what is being addressed, especially if we're working on very specific issues such as making statements or responding to different policy concerns that may come up. Also reviewing meeting materials, providing input on action and discussion items. As Yvette mentioned before, there are subcommittees who are continuously working on these different programs that we have, such as CARES and LEAD. And so from time to time, they'll be bringing recommendations for approval or for guidance. And so that's some of the responsibilities that you'll have there. And then, as always, being an ambassador for FASEB's DEI initiatives. And so it's very, very critical in building that bridge between the Federation and our individual member societies. And then so I've been teasing these programs, talking about it. And so for everyone's benefit, for those who may not be aware, we have 2 current active programs that we run. So one of which is CARES Award. And so this is a monetary award of $5,000 to scientific caregivers. So what it really addresses not only the financial need and the financial burden that caregivers have, but also the strain on time. And so it allows them to pursue any professional development opportunities that come available to them, whether that's just protected time for grant writing, paper submission, or funds to attend a conference and to have, some support for their dependents. And so the reason why this award, I think, is a golden child, I'll just say it, of FASEB, is that it's really looking at caregiving holistically, not just caregiving between a parent and a child, but we really wanted to, in terms of inclusivity, expand our definition of what it means to be a family member. And so that dependent could be a parent, it could be a spouse, it could be an extended family member, it could be somebody who is adopted into a family. And so that's what we look at there. And for the LEAD program, this is also a golden child. They're all golden children, right? Equality across the board. So our reverse mentoring program is really innovative in that it's taking a look at the power dynamics that typically exist within the scientific society and in career and research training. And so what it wants to do is flip those roles and allow for individuals who are in a junior position to have a place of not only advocacy, but also sharing their experiences and being in a leadership role, so that those who are in a senior position who on a day-to-day are making decisions for individuals who, you know, whose shoes they may have never walked in or whose experiences they may have had a long time ago, and things have changed since then. So it gives them an opportunity to really come to the table in a safe space and be able to practice and exercise that muscle of inclusivity and creating a space of belonging. Because one of the things that's really important prior to talking about retention, prior to talking about diversity and adding more diverse people, is really establishing an environment in which those individuals will thrive once they come there. And so just to give, just to give a final note. So for our CARES program currently, to date, CARES has awarded a total of $65,000 to 12 scientific caregivers. And also in this month, very exciting news, you all may get a little sneak peek in our next meeting, but the LEAD subcommittee is in the process of matching a new spring cohort for the LEAD program. Currently, there are four pairs in the program. And next slide. Okay, so as I previously mentioned, expanding the DEAI committee now allows the committee to sort of broaden its focus to tackle DEAI policy issues and federation-wide initiatives. Whereas before, given the lack of representation and the size of the committee, the scope was really limited. So one of the things that we'll be looking at moving forward, and you all have gotten the agenda already for the next meeting, is that we're tackling some issues such as demographics, so setting a standard for the demographics that we collect and report on. And also moving forward, we're going to be discussing and tackling inclusive language and setting a standard for not only our meetings, but also a standard for the scientific community as a whole in terms of the words that we use and the importance behind them and sort of what message it sends to certain individuals. So something, just to give a sneak peek to something that FASEB has been pushing for a very long time is the use of the term historically excluded groups, communities, and/or individuals, and moving away from the idea of an unrepresented population, because that term doesn't really get to the systemic experiences that they have and then how we can provide solutions to those systemic experiences. And then in addition, some of the more, maybe I should be a little quicker, I'm sorry. In addition to that, some of the more standard items that you'll be seeing coming up in the committee meetings would be updates for CARES and LEAD. So when the subcommittees bring recommended recipients that you all will be able to vote on, and then just updates on the pairs as well for the LEAD program. Okay, I promise I'm done, Sally.
Sally's really good at giving us the hook whenever she controls the slides. So earlier I provided some history regarding the transition of FASEB's DEAI programming from MARC to science policy in the Office of Public Affairs. And just as a reminder, as NIGMS's support for the MARC program was winding down, the broader efforts of the FASEB DEAI task force worked to identify strategic priorities for cross-organizational DEAI efforts. As Sally mentioned, this culminated in a decision by the FASEB board to allocate up to $1.5 million to the development and implementation of novel DEAI programs, including the recruitment of designated staff. So in consultation with the DEAI committee and board, staff worked to design 4 priority programs, with 2, as you just heard, CARES and LEADs, launching in 2022. However, also going back earlier in the presentation, Sally showed you some of the revenue, that the interdependencies of our revenue generating programs and the parts of the organization that spend money, aka me. We had to be a little more conservative in how we continue the development of these programs. So as a result of decreased revenue, particularly last year, plans for CARES and LEAD expansion, as well as the launch of additional DEAI programming was scaled back, with new programs requiring additional external funding for implementation. And to that point, the team, including everyone that's on this call today, Elvie, Sally, myself, and with key assists from Maribet, we're actively working to pursue financial support from federal agencies, foundations, and private corporations to expand CARES and LEAD, as well as launch other programs that are in the design stage and just need that financial support to launch. And to that point, just a week ago, we submitted a proposal for one of National Science Foundation's program, Leading Culture Change Through Professional Societies of Biology, or BioLeaps, for a design, basically a 2-year test pilot for about $500,000, which if funded will allow us to pilot a cohort program, which was one of the cornerstone programs that we wanted to focus on for our revitalized DEAI programming. So I will now turn it back over to Sally to explain how the DEAI committee fits within the FASEB governance framework. So over to you, Sally.
Yeah,
talk to your own slides.
I know, I'm sorry. Before we do that, are any questions on the DEAI committee?
Hello, I have a question. You were showing the last budget. Some background noise over there, but sorry for that. So this, I see the Q2 2020 has got like something allotted 1.5 million. Is there a definitive period, like a 5-year period or something that we have to do these programs with that allotted budget?
So that's a great question. I believe the initial allocation was like 1.5 million over 2 years. However, if you think about 2020, we were still dealing not only with the pandemic, but everyone was hiring DEAI staff. And so we were about 6 months behind in building the team. So I will say that the core investment has been invested and we are at the phase where we are like we budget for these things, but like the startup of both the strategic initiatives has already gone through the kickoff money, and we are squarely in the phase of bringing in external funds to expand the programs.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like Cecilia, and Cecilia joined a little bit late. We did not get to introduce her, but you're representing ASIP, correct?
Correct. Cecilia Yakes from American Society of Investigative Pathology. Apologies for being late, but I did jump in at I think a critical point in the presentation. And so this may have been addressed in the beginning. So my thought is, this is a wonderful program. Thank you for inviting my society and myself to be a part. Given that, there's a lot of, first I want to say, I think it's also great that you have now put this at the interface of policy and, really showed a nice strategic plan of how DEI does belong throughout and involves and affects policy throughout the organization. But given that in science policy, with the Supreme Court, the affirmative action, a wave of DEI legislation sweeping the country, is there any preemptive thoughts on how to, structure this program going forward, or any DEI initiatives? And that can go to anyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, are you alluding to structuring it to not get caught up in this recent SCOTUS decision, or?
Well, yeah, so that decision, but then, it's just, I think, just the language and how, how should we proceed, moving forward at your level, but also at our individual society levels, because it's a question that we're getting in committees.
Yeah, and that is certainly something that, you know, SCOTUS gave this committee a gift. You know, one of the tasks that that was in sarcasm font. But you know, like that is one of the things in the timeline that, you know, the language that we use around DEAI, and LV alluded to this as well. You know, we will have to navigate this in real time. I'm starting to track I am not a lawyer, I'm a geneticist. So, you know, trying to figure out what this means for society programs, but in terms of, and I know Sally will touch on this directly with FASEB governance, are we gonna take head-to-head shots responding to SCOTUS? No. But, you know, will we factor this in to our programs, you know, to make sure that we don't get in any trouble when we apply for federal grants? Yes. So that was kind of a tap dance answer, but hopefully it got
Nope, nope. I think it's great. I just want us to be paying attention to it as we move
Oh yeah,
forward.
definitely.
Yeah, what I would add to that too was we just got off an executive committee call, and we just oh yeah, Jay-Z's here, so she can so I'm actually gonna turn it over to Jay-Z because so the governance here at FASEB starts on July 1st. The Supreme Court likes to drop big decisions right before that turnover. And so last year we were dealing with Dobbs' decision. This year we're dealing with this. So I'll turn things over to Jay-Z, kind of just set you up where FASEB is thinking right now. Now, one thing I will say, and I'm actually giving a talk on this next week, FASEB doesn't feel like we have to be first on everything. Just because we're not responding right away doesn't mean that we're not aware of it. It's more that we are trying to be more deliberative, and we have 26 societies that we need to be in consultation with. So that would be my one thing from the governance standpoint, is that we're figuring things out. But now I will turn things over to Jay-Z to talk about a little bit more substantively.
Yeah, I think the big thing is we just discussed with the executive committee. I don't think this made it into many of the stories analyzing the SCOTUS decision, but something that we'll certainly be watching out for is the Department of Education released a statement after the decision and made a commitment to providing colleges and universities clarity on what admission practices and programs to support students are going to remain lawful, and that this would be coming out in the next 45 days. So I think that's one of the kind of, from a policy perspective, first key steps that we'll be looking at. Even though Department of Education is outside of sort of the science purview, my sense, and Yvette, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Department of Ed guidance is going to provide a lot of help to all the other federal agencies about what they need to do. So my sense is that we need to sort of sit tight until we see that, because it's going to have really important guideposts, and I guess Yvette likes to call them, what do you call them, Easter eggs for us. Yvette, is that accurate?
Yeah, I think, and I know, trust me, I am not the most patient person, but when it comes to policy, I have the patience of, that's the only time in my world where I have some patience, because there are lots of swirling activities, but you're seeing some of the groups that are getting out early, they might regret some of the statements that they made, because they might have opened up some of it might have brought attention to things that might not have been considered. So, you know, we are collecting a lot of information, trying to understand the landscape. The decision is the decision. Waiting on what the Department of Education is going to do is step one.
Okay, I don't want to cut conversation off. I did see Tanya had another question. I will say, and I'm going to talk about this after my next set of slides, we will always dedicated open mic time at the end of every FASEB committee meeting. So anytime issues come up like this, it's a wonderful opportunity to bring those up. And then Tanya, do you still have a question?
I really just had a couple of comments. A quick question. I noticed that when the board allocated 1.5 million to develop a DEI program was in 2020. And that's about, and you guys mentioned that that's when everybody was hiring people for DEI positions. And that's about the same time that my organization and my institution started DEI programs. And and it had to do with the murder of Mr. George Floyd. But I also have noticed a trend, and I don't know if that's the case with FASEB, but I also noticed a trend of people distancing from that reality and from those statements that everybody so passionately sent out. So I wonder if FASEB is doing the same thing. I would not be surprised because most people, for some reason, like get this.
I will reassure you, we're not stepping back on
Okay,
that
no, but it
commitment.
wasn't mentioned. Yes, but it wasn't mentioned, and words matter.
No,
So that's
what
why.
it was is we didn't get, so, you know, when the investment was made by the board, when it was allocated in June, I did not recruit the staff member until almost November of 2020. So, you know, we really didn't get the work going until 2021. And we were being very deliberate in consultations with the societies to make sure we were filling gaps. You know, again, I alluded to the fact that I am impatient on most things, but we wanted to make sure that the programs we were developing were not competing with the individual society programs, because we wanted a space for everyone. And what we wanted FASEB to offer would be something that would be applicable to members across all of our organizations. And that took a little bit of time to find the right spots. And I think we landed in the right place. And so we've got 50% of our programming launched and running, live for over a year at this point. Hopefully we'll be launching that third segment. We've done pieces of the fourth segment, which is talking about recruitment for society staff, as well as recruitment for scientists to work in industry and in academic research. We've got pieces of all four up, but we're in it for the long haul.
Thank you, Yvette, but that wasn't even the question that I asked. That had nothing to do with my question. I was just wondering if the efforts launched by FASEB were related to the reckoning that many people had when Mr. George Floyd was murdered. And I have seen it in my institution and my organization that is never mentioned. And that's what I was asking. The second comment that I had to do with the reply to the court for admissions in universities based on race, and I don't know. I mean, this is my first meeting, but I noticed that very quickly it was we're not gonna do anything yet. We're not gonna take it. But are you guys planning to get the feedback of Black and brown people, or is that a decision that you guys already made? That was my question.
I'm going to defer to my colleagues who are on the executive committee because I haven't been part of those discussions.
Thank you, Yvette.
So I'm sorry, in terms of the question, will we be seeking feedback before we respond to the court decision?
Yes, I mean, this is a decision that impacts basically people who are not white. So and all that I hear and all that I see here is people who are not impacted by the decision, saying that you guys are not really gonna respond yet, and that you guys are gonna be careful. And I'm thinking, I would like to see or to hear that there is a plan where you guys are gonna collect the feedback by the people in your organization that is actually impacted by the decision.
Well, I think in terms of what our total approach, and someone can disagree with me from the FASEB staff, is we certainly want to get back to and get feedback from the folks who are going to be impacted by the different actions and things that are going on. So as we noted earlier, because the court just issued this decision and we're not entirely sure where things are going, we need to put together our strategy for figuring out how we're going to respond and what are the next steps, and working with the federal agencies to make sure that the courts, the implications of that we understand the implication of the court decision and then react and respond accordingly. And I think we would certainly do that. I think, as Yvette noted, I mean, the decision was sort of a gift to this committee. We will certainly, part of what we wanted to do in elevating this committee was to get engaged in more of the policy things. So I think I'd like to say that we will certainly get the feedback of impacted individuals. We just don't have a strategy or a plan for doing that yet, because the court's decision just came down and we're still trying to truly understand what it means, particularly for the federal agencies that we work with. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And then I'll just speak to with a comment about some of this thing, because I think you are like identifying something. So we actually, so without getting into too much detail, FASEB did not have a revenue situation, I will say, or money situation until March 11th of 2020, when we sold our campus. And then we all of a sudden had reserves that we had not had for a long time. And on March 13th of 2020, we asked for this money for DEI programs, initiatives. And our board was like, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, not yet. We had a board meeting shortly after the murder of George Floyd, and the board immediately said, yes, release this money. And that was a unanimous decision. And at that time too, just so everybody is aware, the board did release a statement. And one thing that we've decided at FASEB is we are not going to issue statements on things unless we are also doing something about them. So the putting that money forward to make these investments in these programs was that step. And so now it has taken longer than any of us would have liked to see these things move to fruition. But it was just kind of the reality of the situation at the time. I'm actually remembering right now that we actually interviewed LV when I was sitting in the same chair summer of 2021. So it took like a good 5 months to get that initial DEAI manager hired. And then it was another 6 to 9 months to get LV on board. So it's just taken some time.
And I think one thing to also keep in mind, and some of the points that that Tanya, I think, raised at the beginning of her question, is that sustainability is important, right? Not just reacting to react or making very performative statements, you know, out of this need to be reactive, and then not having anything to follow up with it, or like you were saying before, you've seen it fizzle out. So I think it's really important to not only make strategic steps, but really understand how you're going to be contributing to the solution. And so if that means developing programs that in the long run is really going to be addressing some of the inequities that we see when it comes to certain populations who are caregivers who are, you know, from BIPOC communities, that's important in the long run, because that's something that's very sustainable. And so I think to the discussion that's happening right now, like it's a both and I'm excited to now have a committee where we can address these things along with some of the statements that can accompany them.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. So next we're going to talk about the relationship with the DEAI committee will have with the FASEB board of directors. And leading into that, I will just say Tanya's question is an excellent example of what we want this committee to be doing. Part of what we want this committee to be doing is ensuring that we are considering DEAI issues at all levels at FASEB, and this may be a little too strong, but please hold our feet to the fire if you don't think it is happening. And this part of the presentation, we'll talk about how that actually works. So FASEB's board of directors is the fiduciary for the organization, so they get the final say-so on things. This slide is meant to just illustrate the committee governance structure at FASEB. You'll see the board of directors up top. The board cannot, nor do we want them to do everything. Our committees, including this one, are really intended to be the subject matter experts to advise and guide the board's work. So the DEAI committee will develop programs, respond to agency requests for information, and draft comments to proposed regulations impacting diversity and inclusion in the biological and biomedical research community, as well as whatever else comes down the pipe that we are not imagining. This slide illustrates illustrate how DEAI work will reach the board. And so if you see over on the far left, an issue has been identified. And I think we're seeing this on this call. We've identified an issue. FASEB needs to do something about this decision. And so right now, Jay-Z kind of described is we're in the process of creating an action plan. So we got to figure out who's responsible for it. Is that a committee? Is that the board? Is that a subcommittee? Do we need to make a task force? So that we're in that process right now on this recent Supreme Court decision on affirmative action. Once we kind of figure out that plan, that's when I am going to guess the DEAI committee is really going to get involved, and that's where you all are going to hash it out. Be it issuing a statement, some sort of other action. The DEAI committee is the body that is going to be handling that. Once something has been developed, the DEAI committee will endorse it. And this will be one of your committee meetings. This is where a vote will take place. And if consensus is reached, it will then be presented to the board for their consideration. And since the board is the fiduciary for FASEB, we can't speak outside of their approval. So the board is the one that gives the final approval on any statement we're going to release, any action that is on behalf of the entire organization, any money that's going to be spent. That has to be the board's decision because that is their job legally to FASEB. The committee recommendations should be accompanied with enough information to ensure that the board is making an informed decision, but the board should not be relitigating the committee's work. And this is something that we always struggle with a little bit. Mary Ann is on this call. I think Mary Ann is going to be wonderful at saying, hey, the committee already decided this. That's not what we're asking you guys to do. And keep them focused on basically, is this following FASEB strategic plan? Does this address our strategic initiatives and priorities? Those sorts of things. Anything relatively minor in scope, like approving edits to a committee charter or in line with current board approved policy, can be approved by the executive committee, which is basically all of our officers, 2 board representatives, and they meet weekly. So they can make decisions on behalf of the board, basically if it's in line with current board approved policy or if it's relatively minor. There are times when the executive committee has to take more of an emergency action. And when that happens, let the board know right away. So the other thing I would add to this slide is, even though this looks like a direct arrow, in reality, it's really not. Things will kind of jump back and forth. Sometimes the issue is identified by the board, and then the board charges one of the committees to look at it. Sometimes the committee will get into the deliberation and development phase and get the board's feedback before they move forward to endorsing something. Sometimes we'll ask for other stakeholder feedback. So it's really not this linear, but this is just supposed to illustrate that the board does get the final decision making on anything that is on behalf of the Federation, but that the committee, your work is really vitally important. Are there any questions about that before we move forward?
So I've got a question. Yeah. So one of the things that I thought is really interesting about how this committee is working is that it's going to be able to address issues that Science Policy Committee has addressed potentially in the past. And I'm wondering how, because DEI and science policy oftentimes cross, right? And Science Policy Committee has been dealing with some of the DEI issues that have been generated through NIH and NSF and government agencies and stuff. So my question is, how are those 2 committees going to interact with one another?
I'm going to pass that on to Yvette because I think she's got a plan.
Yeah, so partially, I'm trying to give a home to DEAI topics to this committee, but strategically, if it needs to be a check based on when, like looking at the policy overlay, because of when this committee meets, there is that opportunity for that cross reference to the Science Policy Committee. But all of our DEAI efforts were coming out of the Training and Career Opportunities Subcommittee, which, was not necessarily as representative as even this group. So, there is a method to the madness of having the generative discussions with this committee and also engaging with the Science Policy Committee, which meets like a week and a half after. So there could be that cross-pollination. That's always been my intention. But, there are going to be the things just like the OMB item that we had with the board, I guess in June, that came out of the DEAI committee because that's where the subject matter expertise lied. There was no, like, policy could have looked at that, but there was certainly not the expertise even in training and career opportunities. So thank you for lifting that. But yeah, there's the plan in my head of the crosstalk between the two.
Thank you, Yvette. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to stick with it, and I know we're approaching time, so I'm going to try and go quickly, but these are important things that we're going to discuss right now. So first, we do have a newly approved volunteer code of conduct. This can be found under the values and policies section on the volunteer portal. This was adopted by the board at their most recent meeting in June. And it is based on a model created by the Society's Consortium in Sexual Harassment on STEM, which is a group that FASEB is a founding member of, and Yvette is on their executive committee, I believe. And what I really love about this code is that it really speaks to aspirational conduct. We want to be how we want the biological sciences to be, rather than just outlining prohibitive behavior. So you'll see when you read this that it talks about things like honesty and the conduct and attribution of the work, rather than saying don't plagiarize. It says that one of the behaviors we're striving to do is to be inclusive rather than say don't discriminate against people. So it really is a great document that will have us strive to be better than we are, and also to be a model for our fellow member societies. It does apply to all FASEB volunteers in any FASEB associated activity. And the asterisk is there that this document also includes provisions that if somebody's conduct outside of FASEB will negatively impact FASEB's reputation, that volunteer's participation, or somebody else's participation in FASEB activities, then we can I'm trying to say this nicely, ask them to no longer be in that position. So we know there have been incidents that have been in the news, and then organizations say, well, that didn't happen here, so we'll keep them on, even though they were a bad actor somewhere else. This policy allows us to address people that were bad actors, even if it did not happen at FASEB. The key provisions in the volunteer code of conduct, the standards that I mentioned, that they're aspirational. We do outline the procedure for dealing with non-financial conflicts of interest. The board members and any other fiduciaries, our finance committee, our audit committee, they have to sign an annual financial conflict of interest statement, but this is one that is going to apply when we're looking at like CARES awards or lead pairing, things that are not financial in nature, but still serious conflicts of interest. And it also outlines the process for handling alleged violations, including what are the repercussions if there is a finding that somebody violated. Article 4 is our annual disclosure, and later this month you will actually receive a form that you will have to acknowledge that you've read, understood, and agree to abide by this volunteer code of conduct. Next, we just want to talk about the difference between volunteer role as a DEAI member and the staff member's role. So staff, me, Yvette, LV, Maribeth, Jay-Z, we're really in charge of these items on the left. So our administration and facilitation, making sure meetings are scheduled, the agendas get distributed, that we have the appropriate technology. We're also here to clarify governance issues. So that's largely where I will get involved in things and say, oh, we do need the board to weigh in on that. No, we don't. We are here to help let you know when we are going to need resources, or maybe we don't have the resources to do something we would like to do. And we all report to the executive director, Frank Kraus. So Frank is our boss. So, oops, and I see a typo here. It should say DEAI member instead of SPC member, but you all are really here to identify those issues. We've already seen this happen. When we talked about figuring out that action plan, you will be involved in that. And so right now, we're just in this weird time with, like, if we use this Supreme Court decision as an example, that happened last Thursday and we're a week out and there was a holiday in between, and it's really great timing that you all are having your first official meeting on Monday, where we can start determining that strategy and framework for how we're going to address that situation. Because FASEB is a volunteer-led organization. The staff do not lead these things, the volunteers do, and you as DEAI committee members are the ones that help determine that strategy. We really need you to focus on the subject matter or the science. You are the experts on these issues, as Yvette just mentioned. And finally, you report is too strong of a word, but if you have any issues, they should be first addressed with Marcelo and or Lauren, the VP and VP-elect for DEAI. You can also talk to Marianne, the president, or Beth Garvey. And if you really want to, you could get in touch with Frank Kraus, the executive director and CEO. You really should not be having staff as your first point of contact unless it's LV as the staff liaison for this group. And that is because sometimes we have volunteers who are very passionate about things, and then they talk to staff and say, we should do something about this, and staff don't always understand where that request falls within the broader framework of things that we're trying to do here at FASEB. And we also want to make sure that we are maintaining healthy relationships between the staff and the volunteers. So it's always very good for any issue coming up with volunteers to be addressed with other volunteers. And if there is an issue with a staff member that needs to be addressed, Frank is the person that needs to do that. Frank is actually the only person on the FASEB staff that reports to volunteers, and that he reports to the board of directors. The board, one of their roles is the hiring, firing, annual assessment of the CEO. Okay, so moving right along. So we have discussion questions to illustrate these concepts. Because of time, I'm just going to run through. I just mentioned this. Let's say a board member is concerned about new laws prohibiting DEAI concepts. We have no idea where this would come from. And what should Chris do to encourage FASEB to issue a statement? So the answer here is Chris needs to talk to whatever volunteer leadership is in charge of that issue. So in this instance, it would be Marcelo and Lauren, the vice president and vice president-elect for DEAI, and then they will work with FASEB staff to determine how or if that situation is going to move forward. Let's say Chris just goes directly to LV in this situation and then is upset when LV doesn't respond. How should Chris proceed? Again, he should talk to the VP and VP-elect for DEAI. Hopefully what they should be saying is, thank you for letting me know. This really should come to us first. Don't be upset at LV. LV has her own chain of command to adhere to. Another point about this, and I mentioned this earlier, is there is open mic at each committee meeting. Please use that to bring up issues. Anything that's brought up at open mic, Elvie will on a regular basis be meeting with Marcelo and Lauren, and she'll discuss the things that come up in open mic with them, and then they'll figure out how to move forward. Okay, are there any questions about this staff volunteer relationship? Okay. Other member best practices that are outside of the member responsibilities is, and I love that Elvie said ambassador multiple times, but please actively engage with your society. FASEB cannot contact individual society members, so we really need our volunteers to be that conduit to our individual societies. Please be present when you're at committee meetings. Use video if you're able to. We know you're not always able to, but if you can, it really, especially when you're speaking, it really helps to have the video on. And please limit distractions. We understand it's a virtual world, but it does make a big difference when people are engaged rather than multitasking. Encourage and promote the use of inclusive and gender affirming language. And Elvie already mentioned this, and Elvie is a wonderful reference for what is the most inclusive language we could be using. And finally, use technology. The shared hand function is wonderful in Zoom, and the chat function is also very good. Okay, any questions so far? And I'm realizing that we forgot to do something that's on this slide today, but we will get that fixed in the recording. So inclusive norms and meeting practices, and these are from Elvie, who's just absolutely wonderful at this stuff. But yes, raise your hand. That really helps. Make sure that the meetings are collaborative and that we are not interrupting people and that we're having really effective conversations. Elvie, I'm going to turn this over to you. I just started talking and this is actually your slide.
I mean, it was going well, so I was just like gonna let it roll. But yeah, this is just another layer of practices and just speaking about our conduct within the committee. And I think one point to raise that is extremely important is the fact that some of the issues that we'll be tackling, even just recently what we've discussed when it came to SCOTUS's decision on removing racial consideration when it comes to admissions, is that these are highly sensitive topics. These are topics that may bring up a lot of emotion, whether or not you're used to engaging in a large forum talking about these things. So I think it's really important for us to be mindful of the way we engage with one another and to, discuss with good faith with one another as we're tackling these topics, and just to understand that each and every one of us is coming into this space with bias, and to make sure that we're checking our bias and to make sure that we're speaking to one another in a way and conducting conversations in a way that both mitigates and maintains awareness of those existing biases. So I think that's something especially important to consider as a DEAI committee. And we have to be mindful of that at all times, that none of us are approaching these issues within a vacuum. And so to be respectful to one another as we do navigate that. And then also just want to make a note that if there are any additional measures when it comes to accommodations that any committee members may need, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And this sort of inclusive norms and like meeting practices, this is a non-exhaustive list. Like as we continue to have meetings, as we continue to grow as a committee, there are other things that may come to the fore that we'll need to address in there. But for me, most importantly, personally as well, it's very important to be sure that we are cognizant at all times of the severity of the issues that we'll be touching on and just how difficult it may be. So we all need to challenge each other and challenge ourselves as we show up in this space. And then this is my go as well. So we just wanted to provide you with some online resources that are going to become very familiar to you as members of this committee. So this is spanning communication, and let me share my screen as I'm doing this because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Thank you, Sally. So as I mentioned before, sort of the resources that we're giving to you now span the breadth of communications and sort of our our presence when it comes to social media as well, and some different marketing tools that we have available for us for our different programs. So this FASEB for you is FASEB for you. So it just gives you an update on sort of the latest issues that FASEB is discussing, tackling, and engaging with. And in addition to that, you also have this resource at your disposal. I'm sure some of you all may be very familiar with it, but it's member clicks. That's what I call it. I don't know if there's a very specific name, but it's basically a volunteer platform. And so this is where you'll really be able to get all the latest information when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to meeting within FASEB, when it comes to getting different informations about the different committees that FASEB has and what their relation are to one another, their charges and objectives as well. You'll be able to find all of that here. And then my favorite, because I work with the CARES and LEAD program, are promotional toolkits. And so this is, again, for the 5th millionth time, I'm going to be saying ambassador, ambassador, ambassador. This is very important for us when we're opening applications for our different programs, that we provide a variety of different ways in which you can promote these different programs. If you are active on Twitter, if you're more active on Facebook or LinkedIn, or if you want to provide a blurb for, a newsletter that you may be aware of, or, share this information with the communications department within your member society as well. So it provides talking points as well if you're maybe more of an in-person communicator. So whether you're at a meeting somewhere and you're engaging in conversation, you meet a scientific caregiver, you have some points to give them about an amazing program that can really assist them. And so I love these promotional photos that we have for the programs. But yeah, so these, it's a similar promotional toolkit as well for the LEAD program. So as I mentioned before, it just gives you a wide range of resources so that you can be an ambassador for FASEB's program. And then if you have not visited this webpage before, this is our DEAI webpage. And so here you'll be able to find different statements that FASEB has made, other resources that we have as well when it comes to addressing mental health and inclusion. And then also you'll see more information about our different programs. And so clicking these photo cards will take you directly to the application portal where you can read about the programs and then also obviously apply to them as well. And so these are some of the statements that I mentioned previously. And also familiarize yourself with FASEB's strategic vision, just to ensure that, like Sally said, our feet is being held to the fire. And then something that I think is very amazing that FASEB does as well is Faces of FASEB. And so that's a campaign that has been ongoing, I think, for about 1.5 years now, where we believe that it's very, very important to have the visibility of individuals within science and just showing the range of individuals in this space and what it is that they're doing. So it's not always just about their scholarship, it's sometimes about their lived experience as well, and how that impacts their scholarship as well. So you can check out some of these stories in your spare time if that's what you like to do. And then, as I mentioned before, if you are not already following FASEB on LinkedIn, please do so after this meeting. And so you'll be able to stay up to date and connected with some of the things we're doing here at FASEB as well on our LinkedIn page. And then a promo for myself, follow me if you are on Twitter. I am trying to become a little bit more active on Twitter and have more of a presence there. So if that's a space that you feel more comfortable, please follow FASEB and follow some of other FASEB colleagues who are a little bit more active on social media than I am. They have more fun things to post, but here in this space as well, you can continue to share some of the promotional toolkit information that I talked about before, and then just continue to share, retweet, and promote some of the activities we have going on at FASEB. So as time goes on, you'll see me probably mentioning these different resources over and over and over again ad nauseum. You will probably be sick and tired of seeing an attachment that says promo toolkit, but I hope you will share and be the best ambassador you can be nonetheless.
Okay, with that, are there any questions?
I saw FASEB on Thread.
You say you saw FASEB where?
Thread.
On Thread?
Yeah, the new Meta.
I know.
Which is equivalent to a tweet.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that actually, it was funny. This morning I woke up and I was like, wait, what is Thread? And then it's already, we have different special interest groups which are involved with different staff in our member societies. And there is the communications and marketing group is already having a very in-depth conversation about what to do with Thread. So to be continued.
Clearly, I'm not hip.
Yeah, Alana?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I have a really big issue with the racist and sexist statements on Twitter, so it's something maybe we could talk about at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very active and ongoing discussion, like right when it was at its height and everyone was talking about like moving over to a different platform. I forget what the name was, but our communications team had actually looked into that platform as well and creating a space there.
I think that was Mastodon. I really appreciate that feedback because from my personal perspective, I agree completely. And I've kind of stepped away from Twitter, but I know other folks haven't because they felt like it has to be, that it is a place where a lot of scientific conversation is still happening. But we've even seen with some of our own member societies where they're kind of getting burned by the group that is still active on Twitter. It's not becoming a safe place for these scientific conversations. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for staying on. This went a little bit long, but I think we had some really great conversations that I will say from a personal perspective really helped provide some examples in some of the hypothetical slides that we were discussing. So thank you very much. We are so excited for this group to come on board at FASEB and just can't wait to see what happens.
How does the FASEB help the societies and specifically the institutions?
What was the first part of that?
No. How does the FASEB DEI could maneuver to help the societies as well as the institutions? Because societies are part of scientific group, but there is an institutional culture.
LV, do you want to? Yeah, this is something we are trying to struggle with. I will speak because we just the grant application that we just submitted last week. This was a big part of it, that it is supposed to how can you impact cultural change, institution and society wide. And so I think what we are hoping to accomplish through that program, and even this DEAI committee, is for FASEB to set the standard is too strong of a term perhaps, but like whatever resources we can give to our member societies through these volunteer opportunities that they can take back to their societies is a big way that we want to do that. And if it is standard setting, wonderful. If it is in other ways like providing opportunities for people to participate in things that a society may be too small to offer, that's a great way to do it too. But we really are going to lean on this committee to help us shape what that means. And then for institutions outside of FASEB, we're still working on that. But I think our federal outreach through our science policy and everything is already pretty strong. And then we're hoping that we can bring this whole other DEAI portfolio to it as well.
I was going to say making everyone aware of what's happening at the micro and the macro level will be really great.
Exactly. And I think your presence here and the presence of everybody else here is the first step in doing that and understanding that it is a reciprocal relationship Because I think some of the difficulties has been that the member societies have been fragmented in terms of what they're doing when it comes to DEAI, sort of the cultures that they're setting amongst themselves. Like there hasn't been a space where people can come together and really tackle these issues. And if they are, then they're kind of in their own little silos. So like, hopefully this is an opportunity for people, you know, to really come together and provide that support, macro and micro. So what's done here can influence some of those societies, and maybe some positive things that are done there can be spread at a massive level, and that people can interact with it within this space.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think there's some email addresses on the next slide just for.
Yes, and I just closed them, but I will describe. So the last slide has the email addresses for Marcelo, Lauren, Elvie, Yvette, and Maribeth. So, and I am always available. Frank is always available. And then Marianne and Beth, who are president and president-elect, who are on this call as well, are always available for any questions, comments, concerns at any time. We are here to make sure that your volunteer experience is a positive one, and that also you're feeling like you're really making a difference. Okay, well, thank you again, everybody. I think I'm going to let everybody go now that we went 20 minutes over, but we will see everybody Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Have a great weekend.
Bye.